I just thought it'd be interesting to show off how I've went about configuring animations in Unity for my pixel art game. Where a big selling point is basically having lots of different unique looking armour sets and weapons that the player can acquire and use it to customise. If we go into the stash here, you'll see the character getting loads of different armour sets. It's very tricky to develop this using pixel art as compared to a different game that uses something like vector art. I know it's not exactly vector art, but just looking at the way that RimWorld does it, sort of the thing that makes it easier here is that the RimWorld sprites are all fairly static. You know, they don't have attack animations or activation animations for anything when you're playing it. I don't know if you might not have played RimWorld, but basically it's just sprite changes for the direction that the character's facing, and when you're using armour and clothes on top of that, you can just layer them on top. The way that it's done basically is you've got your character sprite, like in my beautiful drawing here, and then you'd have the armour sets which are on the right hand side, and they would just basically be separate sprites you would plop on top. But if we come back to pixel art, it gets a little bit more complex if you want to do it with pixel art and do it animated the way that I've done it. I've basically made the biggest headache I could ever make for myself by developing this game. So one of the big time sinks is making new armour pieces. So here, this is the sprite sheet for my human playable race characters. This is what they'll use. So you've got up the top, you've got walk, then you've got some idle animations and etc. It's not overly complex, but it gets complex when you add this on top. So this is one armour piece. So for armour pieces I need to basically create another sprite sheet which I'll layer on top. If I go back into Unity, you can see my character player game object here. So the way that it works is you've got your character object, which has got the naked body of the character, and then on top all these other game objects are used for each piece of the armour set. So if I disable that, the helmet will disappear. The way that I've done it is the helmet and the shoulders are actually a little bit different. They're just static sprites, as you'll probably notice, and they just bob up and down as the player interacts with the world, and that just uses Unity's in-engine animator tools. It's a bit different for the torso and the lower armour pieces, because obviously you'll see the legs swinging here as I walk, you know, and if I jump, you can see the arms swing out as well. So I actually need to build different sprite sheets for each piece of leg armour and body armour, which is very time consuming, because that means for each new armour piece I need to configure these animations here, and then I also need to create an animation controller and configure all the animation clips to the different states. So very early on I noticed this is going to become a massive time sink, because it's already hard enough for me to produce the artwork, never mind going into the animation tools and dragging in different sprites on top here for each frame and making sure that I'm not making any mistakes along the way. So I decided to make myself a little application just using C# and the Windows forms. So what this basically does is I took a bit of time to learn the metadata of the animation objects and the animation controller objects. I basically just chucked them into Notepad++ and had a look through it, all the different lines, and tried to figure out all the jargon, and I came up with this. And if we run it and open it up here, this basically just allows me to select the PNG metadata file of the sprite sheet of a new armour set, and I can then generate uppers or lowers depending on what it is, and that'll actually generate all these different animation clips for me straight away, instead of having me manually drag in the different sprites into the different frame slots. I can then also go in here. I'm not going to do it because I've already set up all the animations, but I can go into the select animation controller, select the animation controller, and that'll actually just assign all the different animation clips into each of these states. So that's cut down a lot of the time needed to generate and come up with new armour pieces and actually create them, because I can just use this little application here to do all the sort of dirty back end stuff where I'm having to create clips and assign them into the different states. So basically my job has then went down to just creating the actual sprite sheets here in Pixel Edit, exporting them as PNG, and then coming in here and doing all the work from here. One of the other big things about this game is there's a lot of different playable races, and they all have different body shapes, which essentially means if I want to add one new armour set, I need to add it for all the playable races, and there's currently 4 different body shapes for the different playable races. So that means adding one armour set makes the work into, I have to make 4 different sprite sheets for each of the body shapes, which is a massive task, and taking away the manual configuration of the animation clips and the animation controllers really saves me a lot of time. So it was well worth just taking the time out for semi-automating all this animation generation. But I hope you found this interesting. This is WinterBringers on Steam, and if you're interested in it, I would love it if you could wishlist the game. It would really mean a lot to me, and it really helps me go about developing the game knowing that people are interested. If you've got any questions about anything that I've showed you today, just give me a message or drop a comment on the video, and I'm quite happy to create a tutorial or a walkthrough for anything that you might be interested in learning. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.